Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome. After trials and tribulations, we are here, and in the top left corner of Lightshade, from Shopify Rebellion, it's Byun. And in the bottom right, from ENCE Esports, he's the Finnish phenom participating in the ASUS ROG Korean qualifiers. His name is Serral. Alright, so ASUS ROG Korean qualifiers have just happened. These, of course, are for the main event. You have one for each server, and the only thing that actually determines is where the matches take place. So, essentially, that's why we have Serral participating in Korean qualifiers, is because it only means that he has to play on Korean servers. It is not limiting that only Korean pro players can play in the actual event, which is pretty cool. I always love it when events do it like that, because you get to see things like this, where we suddenly have Serral playing a bunch of, the best Korean players that we would usually expect. It's really exciting. Serral and Byun have a bit of a history. The few times that they've played, it has been Byun, I think, on average, who has one more in match score. He's usually the one, I believe, that has the actual advantage in maps won. However, as of recently, of course, Serral has had a return to form. Has been playing absolutely out of his mind, as have been, the three kind of European horsemen of him, Raynor, and Clem. But he's been back into form, playing extremely well, and with how you're looking at recent events, how they've been placing, you do have to say, Serral probably looks stronger than Byun at the moment. Now, Byun's play is never anything that you can, laugh at and say, well, Byun's not playing well. Byun always does play decently well, but it is a thing where Byun, at least recently, only just, I think, got back into Code S. He missed out last season, but finally managed to overcome his barrier, his TVT barrier, which had kind of kept him out for the past few seasons. And as for Serral has been making some really deep runs in the DreamHack events, in tournaments such as those. He's been doing extremely well in these online events as well. So, you're looking at this, I'm especially looking at this, I'm saying Serral in a best of 3 for this qualifier. I gotta say, feels like he probably has an advantage heading into it, as Byun just doing a little dance at the command center. So yeah, this is going to be a really interesting matchup, though. The last time that these players faced in a best of 5, I believe, was for... was it IEM? It might have been IEM. It was one of those larger events. That was the last time they faced, and that was a 3-0 for Serral. However, I believe the first time they faced off after Byun's return was in the King of Battles tournament, where Byun managed to get the 3-2 victory over Serral. So, this matchup has really usually gone a few different ways. It's been either extremely close with how Byun has played it, which is that heavy bio, just attack, 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 low worker count, or it's been series where Serral has been able to defend that, and as of more recently has kind of been the pattern with these two playing, Serral figuring out how to defend that, trading efficiently, and macroing up into just such a massive economy that Byun cannot continue to trade efficiently, which is surprising because that is Byun's strong suit, is just trading efficiently. He is so good with bio, he's so good with just stimming Marines and Marauders, and somehow making it work even against Ultralisks and things such as that. So we'll see how this matchup does pan out. Of course, it is a best of 3, so it is slightly less time. That does mean that you can try and bring out some cheeky strategies. If you get that game 1 win, you can be a bit more aggressive, but there's a higher risk to it, because you're not going to have as many games to fall back onto. Serral in this game, just going for the early Roach Warren, has 5 Roaches already out, getting into the lair. It's pretty standard stuff from our Zerg so far. Zerglings scouting out, just making sure there is vision, knowing what is going up with the Terran, who has gotten himself into, I believe, if we're looking at it, an early stim pack. Actually, a 444 stim pack has come out from Byun, and he's pushing across with some Marines, so this is a very early timing attack that you're seeing come out from Byun. The combat shields is not going to be ready with it, but has Marines. believe, sitting at a pretty healthy amount right now. 21 Marines on the map. What does Serral have to defend this? This is actually a really dangerous push. There are Queens and there are Roaches, though. That might just be enough. We'll see. The Roaches can tank a lot of damage, but this Marine DPS is, you have to respect it so much, as Byun just stimming through, trying to see what damage he can do, and says, yeah, there's not much more that I can get done with this push. Backs out. Byun going back into the tech lab. At home, gonna try and macro up out of this. This was a, I think it was a pseudo 2-1-1 build from him, as only a few Zerglings appear, so Byun says I can drop on this and trade. And now we'll see Serral, what is he going to bring up to try and defend? Have to pull away the drones, and these Roaches, they're good, but they're not fast, and that's what Byun is trying to take advantage of. Using the positioning and the maneuverability of the Medivacs, gets 4 worker kills, pulls them out of position. Now another drop into the natural. Byun going down to the third at the same time. Doesn't look like he's gonna get too much more damage as the Queens are there, but the Queens, they don't have a lot of energy. These Marines should be able to trade out against them, and back at home, 12 drones go down. A massive Widowmine hit, and still these Marines clean up all the Queens. Byun getting some massive damage. Finally, a Medivac goes down, but still more drones die. Byun eventually picks up, but he's still stimming in multiple locations. He's gonna try and focus down another Queen. 16 drones in total go down. Byun makes the move happen. And I was skeptical at first with the double Medivac drop being pushed away, but he brings in the third Medivac, brings in the Widowmine, does so much damage. Now working on his +1/+1, it's going to be ahead of Serral's. Already has the third CC finished, with his additional barracks coming underway. Going to clear creep. Byun has really put himself into a good position here. He's up 4 workers. You really never are up 4 workers against a Zerg, as 2 more drones go down before eventually that first drop is cleaned up. But at this point, Byun has macroed out. He has 2 tanks already on the map, has plenty of Marines to defend, and you know, even if Serral decides that, hey, I want to push out, I want to try and get some damage done, what is there for Serral to push with? It is, I mean, it's a good amount of Roaches, but against Bio, those don't trade the best. Against tanks, those don't trade the best. Byun is just building up an army that he knows should be able to beat what Serral is producing right now, and what Serral had to produce in order to defend early against this pressure. And it looks like Byun's gonna go again. Take number 2, it has +1/+1 on the way. 3 tanks as well. Serral, this might be a rough spot for him. Byun has timed this out perfectly. Did enough damage with the first push, and now he has to defend. We'll see, this is a lot of Bio. The Roaches are just running straight up. The tanks aren't sieged yet, so this might be Serral's chance to pounce. But he's gonna get pushed back now. Tanks finally sieged up, but they're not in range of the Bio. Did a few great shots off there. And you just see, I mean, the amount of damage that these tanks provide against this Roach Ravager ball. And you'd love to see Byun, you know, start to move those tanks around, but behind this, getting up the 4th CC, adding on an additional factory. Already has 5 barracks on the map, and right now, Serral, he's just pushed onto his own side. There's not much he can do. You know, he's scouting out with his Overseer, but there's no way for Serral to leverage units to go across the map and to try and get any damage done, because he's having to focus everything on defending right now. That being said, this double drop should be scouted out by these Overlords. Byun will just relegate to cleaning them up, and is absolutely fine with that. The armory's on the way. Infestors, it's the tech choice of, or the tech pattern of choice here for Serral. An interesting call as it's getting +2/+2, but obviously the fungal growths are going to be extremely efficient at, you know, clearing out the Marines. You've seen players like Dark especially use fungal growth to extreme effects against heavy, you know, late game Terran armies, fungling tanks, fungling battle cruisers, and using that with corrosive bile to get a whole ton of damage, as Byun's armies are just so much stronger. And the +1/+1 bio, it shreds through the Roach Ravager. There's no question about it. Hive on the way, and there is already a Hydralisk Den up, so we are going to be seeing Lurkers out of Serral. Going to be going into Infestor Lurker, I believe, As, ooh, pouncing, a nice fungal growth is going to be able to pick off a good amount of the bio here on the right side of the map. As Byun still just waiting with these two medevacs. Could probably pounce there into the main. It is a hard call to make, as I believe Serral now just has little eyes on this medevac. He's just saying hi, the roaches, giving a nice, you know, giving a nice wave to their neighbors. We have double tank production coming out from Byun already. I mean, Byun already preparing for the lurker transition. When the Zerg starts to get into lurkers, what you really want to do is, if you're not going to be going for ghosts, you want to get up this heavy tank count. And we already see 2 tanks out, or 2 tanks at a time. And on the map, I mean, you're looking at what? So many tanks coming out from Byun. It is a ridiculous amount. 11. This is insane. I mean, you just can't push into this with Roach Ravager. You just can't. Byun's siege line extends so far back. There's no chances for flanks. There's really no chance to try and push it comfortably, as Serral's gonna try and trade, but he can't really. And finally, that double drop goes in the main. Looking to see how much damage it can get done. It clears up the first wave of roaches that were there to defend. Should eventually get cleaned up, but can Serral defend the push at the front? Still has that infester, has lurkers, but I mean, what are lurkers gonna do? There's so many tanks. Ooh, fungal growth is good. Serral, though, not gonna be able to save the hatchery. Same time, Byun just pulling back with this force that was going to reinforce. Says doesn't need it. Here comes Serral. He's gonna try and collapse. Has one blinding cloud, but that doesn't get all the tanks. And oh, Serral's just taking so much damage. He might clean it up, but even then, doesn't have enough roaches to comfortably say he can clean it up. He's gonna call GG as the second army comes through. Byun takes game number 1. And welcome to 2000 Atmospheres. That was a weird way to say it. In the top right, taking that game 1 from Shopify Rebellion, it's Byun. And the bottom left, from ENCE Esports, playing, of course, with the ping disadvantage as he is participating in the Korean qualifiers, it's Serral. And I don't say that to, of course, take away from Byun's play in that last game, because it was pretty incredible. And Serral, of course, made the choice to participate in these qualifiers, says, hey, I want to give it a go. I want to see how I can do on the Korean servers. And still managing to perform incredibly well considering that. But Byun in that game 1, I mean, just so well played with the 2-1-1. It's a build that Byun, of course, popularized back in like 2014. And we kind of forget how good Byun is with the 2-1-1 until you see it happen, until you see him do it again. Coming in, the double medevac drop doesn't initially get damaged, but brings in a third medevac with the Widow Mine, constantly positioning around the roaches. Just so well played. Got, I think, 16 workers, and that was enough to really snowball the game for Byun into a position where, I mean, it was really hard for him to lose because he was ahead in tech. He was already ahead in kind of reading where Serral was wanting to go with his composition, and Serral hadn't been allowed to get across the map to get any damage. In fact, he hadn't really been allowed to even defend how he wanted to. And it just means that Byun comes out, macros up, trades extremely well with the 11 tanks that he had, and eventually brings in that second army, goes to snipe the other third base, and Serral does not have enough to defend. And we'll see what the build here for Byun in game 2 is. It might be a situation where he decides again, hey, I do want to actually go for the 2-1-1. And of course, it's a build that is extremely reliant on the micro, and that's why I don't think you see it as much in when you have international events where you're playing on different servers and you're playing with, you know, with both players with slight ping. You don't see Byun actually bring out the 2-1-1 as much. But here, game 1 gets the victory, and game 2 does look like it's going to be straight up factory after the barracks into Hellions. So a much more standard opening, the 1-1-1, the Destiny Cloud Fist, a coin termed by Husky StarCraft, and this is a build that is meant to be a lot better for the macro. Of course, Byun still got a fairly early third in the last game, but the 1-1-1, it allows you to just be comfortable in defending and poking. It's not meant to really get a ton of damage unless the Zerg missteps with their queens. And you just macro up into bio extremely quickly, and while trying to get those little bits of damage. As for Serral, once again into third base, and I mentioned earlier that in recent matchups, Serral has obviously always had the advantage, and that's been, of course, in international events. In, something like this, obviously we see Byun take a fairly comfortable Game 1 victory. You gotta feel like Byun right now, playing extremely well, and even though in the past his form has been shaky, I'd say in the past month or so it's been shaky, where he's dropped some matches to some players where you're like, maybe we would expect Byun to win that. But as it comes around, as we saw happen with the GSL Code A qualifiers, it seems that Byun has started to kind of overcome a few of those mental barriers that were holding him back, as a Zergling is going to scout out this drop. It's 5 Marines and a Widow Mine heading out across the map with the Banshee and Cloak on the way behind it. So Byun probably looking to get a bit more early damage than not with this. Is going to be able to clear up quite a few Overlords as they're out on the map, and you see them positioned pretty aggressively. So Byun is going to say, listen, I know you scouted it. I'm just going to go for the Overlords. I'm going to see if I can supply block you at all. And looks like that might happen, but there's the immediate response. Roaches and Zerglings going to say, no can do. Please don't. I need the supply. And immediately into the tanks and the third base for Byun. So he's going to be macroing up out of this, but it's a very, it's a very anti-roach army. This is, Byun is building units that say, all right, Serral, if you go for a 3-base roach push, in any decent time, I will have enough defenses with the tanks, with the Banshees. Of course, the Banshees are going to go across the map, and we actually see the drop here. Ooh, the retargeting. It's 3 drones before eventually picking up. Banshee got 2 kills, was shoved back. Those were probably on Zerglings, as didn't add to the worker count, and we'll see. Byun a lot less successful here with the early pushes, with the early harassment than he was in the last game. Is going to be repairing up that Banshee. Only 3 drone kills, so Serral just in a much more comfortable position than I would say. This is, as a Zerg, that's, 3 drone losses is fine. You are absolutely happy with that. And he's already getting into Glial Reconstitution, getting up the Evo Chambers to work on his upgrades, and Byun, he's going to be looking for a push here, maybe. Setting up tanks around the Xel'Naga Watchtower. Just has an outpost here in case, I guess, Serral comes across the map. But it's going to be doing any pushing, so we'll see. Byun is in an awkward position this game, I'd say. Not getting a lot of damage, has these 2 Banshees, and is going to try and push around with them. Ooh, focusing down Ravagers is pretty nice, actually. If you're able to kill off Ravagers, that means that you can suddenly push forward with these tanks, and that's exactly what Byun is going to do. Says, listen, I've actually killed off a lot of your anti-tank, and pulls back, actually. Huh. I really thought Byun might push that. There were only 2 Ravagers available. That's pretty easy to commit onto, but decides to wait. And Serral now going to be going for the Zergling run-by, seeing if there's anything at home, and there really isn't a lot actually at home. Byun hasn't placed down his 3rd CC, is only now getting it into an orbital, so macro-wise, a lot further behind than he was in the last game. And you even see now, the supply depot wall getting pressured. But it's 1-1 on the way. Stim is almost done, and we might see Byun try and push with Stim, but it's a situation where it would be very hard for him now to at this moment, because you already have more Roaches up, you have a good amount of Ravagers forced, so any tank can be biled down, plus the Zerglings hanging around where this 3rd base is going to be dropping. It just means that it's going to be awkward for Byun to try and really push out anytime soon, at least. As soon as 1-1 hits, it's going to be a lot easier. The bio will just be a lot stronger. When you get those 1-1 upgrades on bio, they are, just so massive, and they make them so much stronger exponentially. So And it's going to be decently far ahead of the Zergs. Serral, a little bit slower on his ranged attacks, and Carapace. And those are, I mean, those are massive upgrades, especially for Roach Ravager when you're trying to you know, tank the bio and trade out. On even upgrades, Roaches can do extremely well at defending these bio pushes. When the Terran's ahead, that's when it starts to get a bit scary. And you see Byun, I mean, he's just posturing around. Byun isn't even committing to anything yet. He's just saying, I'm across the map. I'm gonna make you worry about me making a push so you in turn cannot, you know, push out and try and get any damage done. And Serral has to respect it. It's a good tank count, 3 tanks, the 1/1 bio. It is a fairly scary army, and Byun is just taking advantage of that. He's going to move out a second force here, though. This is just 2 medevacs with a bunch of Marines. Gonna see what poking he can do around the creep. And you gotta say, I mean, again, this game just has been posturing. It has been posturing and threatening from Byun, and Serral respecting that, building up a pretty decently sized army. I mean, it's a lot of Roaches and Ravagers, and there's gonna be Banelings added on soon as well. So, it's not an army that Byun necessarily really wants to push into, just because it is so powerful in a straight up fight if you don't respect it. But finally, we're gonna get some action. 2 medevacs dropping on into the 3rd base. Don't pick off any drones just yet. I mean, see, Byun just trying to pick off what he can before eventually picking up and gonna go straight out into the natural. There's another Spore Crawler there though, and besides, maybe that's not the best idea. The redrop here, I don't know if I like this. Byun is going to be just losing a lot of Marines, focuses down a Queen, but he'll get a ton of damage. At the same time, he has finally moved forward. This offensive line on the left side of the map says, all right, now I can start to leverage this position. Now I can start to push forward. And he does have an incredible spread of units. I mean, Serral already has a lot of Banelings. 26 Banelings in total. It's a scary force, and here he comes. Serral might pull the trigger. Resplits the Banelings, goes on in. The Ravagers are gonna try and bile down the tanks, and they get some incredible connections. Serral cleans it up. And Byun had a great position, but Serral just had what he needed to fight against it. Finally, we're going to see Serral start to work on his +2 upgrades. Has the Carapace on the way, which is, of course, a much more important upgrade. And ooh, the Banshee. Spore Crawler wasn't quite up, but it's just hanging around, focusing down an Extractor. But you have the +2 Carapace. You also have Adrenal Glands on the way for the Zerglings, which is, again, an upgrade that just makes them do so much more damage. It is insane how fast Cracklings just melt through armies if they're allowed to sit on them, especially with the +1 melee. When that comes through, and now, I mean, +2 as well. It's going to be a very, very potent army from Serral. This is an army that, if you're pushing into it, can easily clean you up if you misstep, if you miss micro, or if you're not fully prepared for it to collapse on in on you. And we see Byun, he's going for another push here. This force is not strong enough, though, to really threaten Serral. And I think Byun has to recognize that. He should probably just pick up and go, because that is so much Zerg. Whew. Stick around. Byun just trying to distract his opponent because he has 3 medevacs full of Marines and Marauders going on into the main. He's going to be able to focus down one of the buildings. The Ultras Cavern has to be rebuilt as Baneling's now rolling in. Ooh, that Parasitic Bomb is so good, but GG?